Hey everybody, it's MotherGoose27 and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about another possible but unlikely Warhammer Total War Warhammer 3 faction. And when I say unlikely, I mean extremely unlikely. So today we're going to be talking about the Fishmen. Everything I talk about today, there's going to be links to in the description below. Now, the Fishmen, if I'm being honest, I think they have the least chance of being in the game. There's one other race, possibly, that has a smaller chance, but let's just be real, the Fishmen have almost absolutely nothing. Just like my last video, I want to focus as much as we possibly can on what we know. I want there to be as little speculation as there can be. But, that being said, we don't really know a lot. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you guys what we do know, then I'm going to talk about some of the rumors, and then I'm going to give some of my own personal speculation on how I would like to see the faction work. But before we can actually get into that, it's very important to remember that this is a meme faction. This is a joke faction that's been around since almost the beginning. And that's all it really is. The devs never really put any love and care into making it a faction. I personally think they were just as big a part of the joke as the community were. And it's fun getting to hypothesize when we're actually going to get the Fishmen, and obviously they never come. Like I said, just important to remember before we really talk about this. So, what we know. There are Fishmen. They exist. They are an underwater race. And they live in the sunken lizardmen underwater city of, and I'm going to butcher this name, Chupayotl? I definitely didn't pronounce that correctly. But the story of Chupayotl is where we get most of what we know about the Fishmen, what we actually know. So, what you guys need to know about this city is it was a very important city for the lizardmen and their geometric web. This city was the reason that the lizardmen of Lustria and the lizardmen of the Southlands could communicate. There was a great catastrophe towards the end of the first Chaos invasion where the city sunk below the waves, and some lizardmen were able to escape, but many died. And with it falling, the lizardmen of Lustria and the lizardmen of the Southlands really had no way to communicate with each other, and while they both were pursuing the great plan, they had no way to coordinate plans. That was a very simplistic summary of it, but now that you know about the city, I want to read you guys a quote that I was able to find. Now, this quote I found in a forum. The poster's name is Corvus Codex, and they didn't write this. They quoted it from something else, but I wasn't able to find what they were quoting it from. So this could be canon. It could not be. Chupayotl didn't remain uninhabited for long. An unknown aquatic race seems to have colonized the city. So this quote gives us a couple of things. One, obviously, where they live. That's my whole point of talking about it. This is their city. It could be their capital, it could be just one of their cities. I personally like the idea of it being their capital. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But from the phrasing of this quote, it definitely sounds like the Fishmen and the Lizardmen are not the same at all. My original idea was that the Fishmen were maybe a group of Lizardmen who got trapped underwater when the city sunk and they evolved to become Fishmen. But the way it's phrased makes me believe that the Fishmen were killed when the water sunk, and the Fishmen came and inhabited it themselves. Also, something very important that I didn't mention about the city, it is located in the deepest part of the ocean, the Stygian Trench. Chupayotl was located towards the south side of Lustria. Now, I know that technically it wouldn't really fall under Warhammer 3's main map, which makes it even more unlikely that it would happen than it already was, but there's very little on the lore. You could move it really wherever. Or you could say they had a couple of cities and this was just one of their colonized cities. But we'll get back to that in a minute. That's really everything we know. That's it. Canon-wise, that's all we can confirm. And unlike the Snakemen, who had 15 models in the early editions, not their own army book, just some models, the Fishmen have no official models. But there's a link below to some alternative models if you want to kind of get a look at what they might look like. Time to address some of the rumors, the Nauticans. Now, I have heard several people within the community refer to them as the Nauticans, and personally, I really like this. The only problem is it's not an official term. The only place that I could find that actually referred to them as the Nauticans was an unofficial army book. Fantastic army book, linked below. You should definitely go check it out. But actual lore-wise, there's no reference to them being called the Nauticans. But I like the name, and I think CA and Games Workshop could definitely keep it. Next, Sea Elves. I've also heard some people refer to them as Sea Elves. Sea Elves and the Fishmen are very, very different. The Sea Elves are an actual Elvish faction that appeared in the 1st and 3rd edition. Now, they were just like normal elves. They lived in Ulthuan. Now, to be exact, the High Elves lived on the inner part of Ulthuan, and the Sea Elves lived on the outer circle section. They were sea travelers, they were merchants, traders, fishermen, but at the end of the day, they were still elves. And I believe, I'm not totally sure about this, but I believe that they basically were just merged with the High Elves. Okay, the last one I want to talk about is Lovecraftian style Leviathan creatures bringing down enemy ships. And while I love this, again, I couldn't find anything that confirmed that the Fishmen actually use these creatures as a part of their army. Now, again, I absolutely love this idea, and I definitely think that CA should implement it. But again, my whole point of adding it to this section is I couldn't find any actual reference to it. Now, when you read the Warhammer wiki page on Chupayotl, it does talk about Leviathans, again, linked below. So I believe they're there. I believe that they work with the Fishmen. There's nothing official saying they do work together. Now, I just want to talk about some of my ideas. This isn't going to be long, just how I think that potentially they could work. A lot of players say that if CA or Games Workshop wanted to make the Fishmen, they would have to start completely from scratch. And I disagree with this. Now, they would have to start mostly from scratch. But we have some C units. Let's take a look at them. So first off, the Vampire Coasts. I could see there being a little bit of overlap between their units. And then also we have the Indoneth Deepkin from Age of Sigmar. And I know, we don't like Age of Sigmar, but the Indoneth Deepkin are an underwater faction. And so the way I think they could potentially do this is get rid of, I believe, I don't know much about their lore. I'm more of a fantasy battles guy. I haven't looked a lot into Age of Sigmar, so please forgive me if I say anything wrong. But remove I believe they're either undead or elvish units, maybe undead elves. I don't know. Remove them. They're gone. Keep their mounts. Look at how amazing these things look. I would love to see these in the Total War Warhammer games. And obviously, like I said, take the undead elves, whatever they are, off and put Fishmen units on top. Now, again, I don't know a lot about Age of Sigmar, but I believe after doing a little bit of research, I probably should have done more, they technically count as flying units. And so they can swim, and when they're on land, they technically fly. I think that's how they work, and I think that would be a really interesting mechanic, because obviously there'd have to be a little bit of a stretch for these sea creatures to be on land. I love these mounts, and I think with a little bit of adjustment, they could work in Total War Warhammer. I think it would be a waste to add these units if there aren't naval battles. Now, obviously, naval battles will be great, but I do not think the Fishmen would actually participate in naval battles. I think they'd be an alternate style of naval battles where the faction that isn't the Fishmen are on their ships, and they are defending against their Leviathans. They're defending against their units coming out of the water, either trying to tear the ship down or get on the ship. I saw somewhere in the forum someone say it would be great to see them actually capture ships and then use the people there as food. I think that would be a really, really interesting mechanic. I would hate to have an underwater faction and then have them meet up with an enemy ship and then fight that battle on land. That just sounds a little disappointing to me. What's the point of having an underwater faction if we ain't gonna fight on the high seas? My last idea is that they would kind of be like a horde faction, but I don't think they should be like a horde faction. Let me explain. I think they should have one capital city. Chupayotl, however it's pronounced. This is their city, and not only that, only a few races could actually attack them underwater. I'm sorry, I don't think the Empire has the ability to attack an underwater city. If there's something in the lore that proves me wrong, let me know in the comments. So you've got one city, it's theirs, they are pretty safe there because only a few factions could actually attack them, potentially the Elves, and then probably anything undead. But to balance this out, saying they're pretty safe underwater, I think a really unique mechanic would be if they could only capture and occupy settlements that are on the water, port cities. They could take it, they could defend it, they could quickly return to the water when they need to, and then launch their invasion of the rest of the world from there. I read one comment saying it'd be really cool if they had one city and they were like a raiding faction and they just raided cities. Well, I do think that would be fun. I personally would at least enjoy the ability to occupy some cities. This faction would be fantastic at capturing port cities. They would be fantastic at their unique styled naval battles. But then in terms of actually pushing through the land, capturing cities, they may not be the best. It's all about checks and balances, I guess is my point. Now, I just wanted you guys to know what we actually know about this race. Again, it's a joke race. They're probably never going to be added in, but that doesn't mean we can't just enjoy speculating about it. And if anyone, for some chance from CA or Games Workshop, is watching this video, just because it's a meme doesn't mean the fandom doesn't want it. I think they'd be a great faction, and if you read through the forums, there actually are a lot of people who would like this faction. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you so much for all the support you've shown my last 2 Warhammer videos. You guys are absolutely amazing. Love you guys. I will be back next week talking about the Kurgen, so definitely stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to join the flock, and I will see you in the next one. Mother Goose out.